This morning I thought it would be kind of fun to have the State of the Church address. Since we're kind of in that political mode, mindset, with candidates saying things and doing things that we just kind of look at them and think, why did you say that? What are you talking about? And do I really want you to lead, to lead the country? I'm not saying who or anything like that, but we're kind of in that mindset right now as far as being in the political mode. So this morning is going to be the State of the Church address. There was a song that was written as part of a musical some time ago, which is called Seasons of Love. It was part of a musical called Rent. And in it, they say 525,600 minutes. And they count up, I guess, the minutes that are in a year. And I thought about that while I was reflecting and kind of preparing for my, annual pastor's report, and thinking, that's a long time. I mean, it really feels like we only just arrived. I don't know about Susan or the kids, but I really feel like, a few weeks ago we backed up the moving truck and then the other moving truck and then had to go back to Massachusetts to get the third moving truck a few weeks later because of fiasco with U-Haul. And it hasn't seemed like we've been here for that long. But when I stopped and thought about it, that's a lot of minutes that we've been here and partnering with you in ministry. And I am so grateful and thankful that God has led us here and that you have accepted us with open arms and loving arms for us to be here. It's just such a long time, 525,600 minutes. And that's the amount of time we've been in ministry, roughly about the amount of time that we've been in ministry together. And looking back on our time together and kind of reflecting on that and the amazing work that God has done, it was probably early February, maybe late January, where we came for our interview and we began that process, and the church called us to become pastors here. And I started thinking, wow, our kids are going to go to a different school again. Because, you see, we moved from New York to Massachusetts. Emily and Kyle were already, Emily and Kyle were already in the school system there. And then to think of them moving to another school system within a short amount of time really kind of gave a little bit of stress to me and Susan, I think. We were kind of nervous about that. We were nervous about having to move again, get another moving truck and go through that whole process. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. And I try to be completely honest with you every time that I speak, either from here or when I'm in conversation with you. I try to be as authentic and transparent as I can be. When Susan and I stepped foot on your campus here, on the grounds of this church, when we got out of the car, having been there for 7.5 hours on our drive in January through the snow and the ice and all that stuff for our first meeting, we knew that there was something different about this place. We knew that the presence of God was here and is here. And we knew, even before that we really had the conversations with the board, that this place was different. And that we were excited to be part, if not just the process of engaging in conversation with the board, but to begin ministry here. And we know that God is at work here. This past year has brought forward a lot of changes, a lot of challenges for us. We're grateful to be, working with you and alongside you. And moving and all of those things we've really enjoyed this past time together. First of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for investing in me as the senior pastor. The first time that I've been a senior pastor, I've been in ministry for 12 years now, most of it in youth ministry and associate work. But to step foot into that senior pastor role is a challenge for me. It's something that's new. And I really want to thank each and every one of you for being gracious and kind to me and allowing me to kind of make mistakes here and there and maybe bend a few rules to make allowances for me and things like that. I get some smiles out there, so thank you very much. And I want to thank each and every one of you for investing in us financially, being able to support us in a lot of different ways. To support Emily and Kyle and Luke when we first came, to give them gifts and make them feel like this is their new home. I can't overstate how amazing that is for me and Susan to know that you don't just care about, what's that? We should do it again. I don't think we're going to leave and come back again. Oh, the presents? We should do that again? Well, you got a birthday coming up pretty soon, so you don't have to worry about that. But to come and have presents for the kids, I mean, this is something we didn't even know about. I mean, it overwhelmed us with the amount of love that you guys and the church board and leadership has shown towards us. The church board leadership, whatever you want to call that group of people that we've been talking about, has really been supportive of me and the mission that God has called us to. I want to thank Al and Pearl and Mary for loving on me and Susan and encouraging us and helping us. Also want to say thanks to Bert and for week after week after week putting up with the amount of sermons that I give you, and if I do give it to you or if I don't give it to you, and the adjustments that we have to make, and helping out with the website and things like that. It's just been a tremendous, tremendous help. We want to thank you so much for that. I also want to thank Steve, who just actually stepped out, but I want to thank Steve for really being the guy that comes around during the week and fixes little things that are going on in the church, helps me out a lot, because those are things that I don't necessarily have to do. I can do them, but to take that off my plate is huge. To make sure that I don't have to walk around the sanctuary and check light bulbs, or to make sure that light switches aren't working, and stuff like that. That takes a huge load off my plate and allows me to do ministry. So I want to thank him so much for being part of that mission and helping us out. One of the ministry components that I learned about that when we first got here is about building relationships. One of the first things that I was told anytime you go into a church is you're going to build relationships. And that's one of the most important things that you have to do your first year. I've been told, don't change anything, just build relationships, get to know the people. And although we've made a few adjustments here or there, that's been one of our focuses this past year and is going to continue to be one of our focuses through the next coming years, to build relationships with people and to build relationships with each other. And that's something that we do pretty well here, I think. We do that in a lot of different ways. We did that through our Easter celebration. When we first came, we had an Easter breakfast, and we engaged in that and enjoyed that together. Had a lot of fun connecting with each other, and we did that. And then we tried an outdoor service in the spring. I don't know how many of you remember the amazing outdoor service that didn't happen, because when we first, we set up everything outside, and we woke up that morning and it was raining. And it was raining so hard and sideways that it was going to get us all soaked, and so we decided to come in. And then 10 minutes after we started service, it was sunny again outside. But that's okay, because the whole reason why we were doing that was to build relationships and grow community together. And so hopefully we can do that this year, just without the rain. And so one of the things that I realized really early on is that we, as a church, like to build relationships together and engage in community together. Let's see, I'll turn this on, and I think our computer might have crashed back there. That's okay. Don't worry about it. It is, isn't it? And so after we had our outdoor service, we realized that being a part of the community is really important, and engaging in relationships is really important. And so we came up with, and Susan and myself, and we decided that having a kids event would be a good idea. So we didn't know what that would look like, And we thought that engaging with our kids in our community would be great. And so with the help of Audrey, is that her name, Audrey? Audrey. Yeah, I know. Let me talk, Susan. You want to talk? Does Susan want to talk up? No, I want to make sure I got her name right, Audrey, because I always say Aubrey, and it's not, it's Audrey. And Audrey came and helped us out, and Sarah was tremendous in connecting us together and making sure that we could engage our community in a new way. We had an open gym, which we thought would be a great way to connect with the community. Well, because the season ended, Emily, and we ended our season of it, but thank you anyway. And why are you talking? This is not the Kyle podium. Be quiet. Thanks. And so we had a kids' open gym from September, and it ran through until November-ish, I think, somewhere in that December. I know it was getting colder. So yeah, somewhere in that ballpark in December. And we didn't measure our success necessarily by the number of students we had. We measured it by the growth that they had. And them engaging together and growing together was huge. And being able to physically get out and get in the gym and play and learn new games and things like that was great. And that was one of the things that we did this past year. Another one of the things that we did this past year was to have to engage in a holiday which is kind of frowned upon by the church in general, which is Halloween. And so we thought, well, people are going to be out trick-or-treating. Why don't we just have a trunk-or-treat at the church? And so we asked the church to come alongside us. Susan and I were going to have a trunk-or-treat, and we thought it would be kind of fun for us to all do together. And so we had a trunk-or-treat. Let me see if I can find some of the pictures from that. I had some of them. There we go. We had a trunk-or-treat, and we had roughly over 10 cars. There you are. We had over 10 cars, and we asked people in the congregation to decorate trunks, fill it with candy, and wait for kids to see if they were going to come from the community to trick-or-treat out of our trunks. And we had over 10 trunks, as I said, with adults, participating with those trunks. And we had probably 40 to 50 kids from the community down here, from the communities across the street, and down the street down there, come and meet with us and trunk or treat with us. And it was a great way to get to know some of our neighbors, get to know some of those children. And that was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed that. So that's going to be one of the things that we do this next year as well, and hopefully to do it a little bit bigger and a little bit better. I'm not going to be, what's that? I'm not going to be the character that I was last year, although maybe some of us are going to stay the same characters. But that's one of the things that we did. It was a lot of fun. So thank you so much for those that participated in that. And if you want to participate in that next year, just wait until probably September. We're going to start to kind of get that ball rolling so that we're all ready for trunk or treat. So make sure you see me or Susan for that. And after kind of going through that process and learning a little bit more about our community and learning more about ourselves, we focused on outreach, and that building relationships and outreach is really one of those things that we can't live without. It's one of those things that we need to focus on. And so we thought, you know what? We would like to bring back the Thanksgiving meal that I believe has been part of this church's history for a really long time. And so we had our Thanksgiving celebration, and it was a great time to see a lot of people that we haven't seen for a while or don't normally see from week to week. And we had a lot of people in the gym. I think we probably had close to 50 people, if not a little bit more than that, in the gym. Just celebrating and being thankful for what God has done in our lives, what God is doing in our lives, and thankful for each other. And it was just a wonderful time to celebrate with each other. And then after those seasons, we kind of came into another busy season, oddly enough, with Advent. And we had our Christmas Eve service, and we had the children come and play instruments in the first half of the service, and then we had some candlelight the second half of the service, and sang some hymns and sang some Christmas carols and Christmas songs, and it was a wonderful time to celebrate our Savior's birth. And then, and then after the holiday season came and went, we decided to kind of take a break. We decided to kind of slow down a little bit because we had been running full steam until the end of the season. And so I thought it would be really great for us to gather together for a weekend or so, for a few days, for spiritual deepening. Just kind of to sit back and allow the Spirit to speak to us and have someone come in from the outside and share with us what God had laid on his heart. And so we had Bruce Barnard and his wife Amy come and share with us in February what God had laid in their heart through a time of spiritual deepening, and kind of focused on where God was leading us and to get more in tune with the Spirit, to get deeper with the Spirit. Whew. Right? I mean, let's take a breath. God has definitely been at work this past year, and these are only some of the highlights. And after I had finished my pastor's report and printed it all out, I started thinking, wow, I missed this and this and this and this and this. And I mean, I could just keep going on and on about the amazing work and the amazing things that God has done and that we participated in this past year. We wanted to make sure that we had discipleship groups, that we met once a week with the discipleship. And so we have discipleship groups that meet throughout the week. If you're not engaged in one of those, make sure that you participate in one of those. It's a great way to get to know each other and to grow at the same time. One of the amazing things is that we have grown spiritually together. And we have grown in numbers, and that's wonderful. I mean, I'm not a numbers guy. I'm not a ABC guy, attendance, buildings, and cash. I mean, counting those things can help help us in some ways, but those are not the things that I focus on. But we really have grown spiritually together, and I know that for a fact. And God is going to continue to bless us and to move us and to challenge us over this next year. This upcoming year, this next year, we're going to continue to build relationships, going to continue to focus on building relationships with each other and outside in our communities, wherever those communities are, whether it be where you live in Colchester or Essex Junction or in Williston or South Burlington, other places that I have forgotten to mention. Did I forget any of them? Any mention any? No, good, okay. So some of those different areas, and we're going to be engaging in those relationships in those communities. One of the things that was clear when reading the scriptures is that Jesus had a lot of energy, and he had a lot of enthusiasm, and he had a lot of love for his disciples. And he placed a lot of importance on building relationships. And not just with the people that rabbis or people in the religious elite thought that he should be building relationships with, but he built relationships with all people. And he wanted the disciples to do this. He modeled this for the disciples and wanted them to do that as well. But the disciples couldn't do this immediately. It wasn't like a switch that they could flip on in their heads and just all of a sudden, boom, they were there. They had to go through a process, and they had to share this good news and be able to engage in this discipleship making in a new way. One of the ways in which we're going to be building and engaging together in discipleship making is through a series called 11. I talked about this a little bit last week. Most of us have more than one relationship. So if we really stopped and thought about our relationships that we have, every one of us has at least more than one relationship. And of course I'm saying relationship is in terms of interactions with people that we have more than just on a once or twice a year or something to that effect. We have these relationships. We're engaged in relationships all the time. One of the relationships that I've just actually started is on Tuesday mornings with the cashier at Shaw's at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's the best time to go to Shaw's, best time to go food shopping because no one's there. And you can run up and down the aisles and get what you want and be done. And this woman, her name is Emily, and she broke her hand, and so I've engaged in just kind of chatting with her as we, go through, she checks out my stuff, and I go through the line and try to encourage her and ask her how her day's going and stuff like that. And that's one of the relationships that I'm starting to build in the community. I have no idea how old she is, where she lives, anything like that. But it's one of those relationships that I'm trying to engage in. There are other relationships that I'm engaging in on Monday nights. I'm engaging in relationships with all the guys that play basketball that beat me up all the time. And it's a lot of fun to engage in those new relationships. Guys that have been in church and out of church, guys that are pastoring churches, guys that have no church experience, and engaging in those relationships. What are some of the relationships that you are engaged in? What are some of the relationships that you have, but maybe haven't really identified in your head as real relationships? What are some of those? It's our responsibility to find out what those relationships are and to be intentional about those relationships and to preach the good news, to share and encourage and use our relationships for God's glory. My prayer this year is that we will be intentional about our relationships and the relationships that we already have. And I know that we are very busy. I know that we're running around from here to there to everywhere. There's so much that is going on. There's so much that's on our plate. I started thinking about my parents and the busyness that they had, and now looking at my life and thinking, wow, I'm way busier than my parents were. And it's just crazy how busy we are. And as we seek God and we seek His wisdom and seek Him to help us build and foster those relationships here in Vermont for Him and not for ourselves. As we move into one of the focuses this year, which is to build relationships. So I decided to think, okay, well, the first question that I need to have is, what is a relationship? What is a relationship? What's it all about? According to the dictionary, a relationship is a connection or association or an involvement. So how many relationships do we have? So think about that for a second. How many relationships do you have? A connection, an association, or an involvement? How many do you have? And we all know that relationships are a two-way street. There's give and take in a relationship. There's you investing in and the person receiving that, and the person investing in you and you're receiving that. It goes back and forth. There are so many different relationships that are out there. So where have we seen in our world people trying to get out of the relationship but not give? Or vice versa. If you're giving and never receiving in a relationship, that can be damaging. It can be hurtful to yourself. One of the movies that was out there, let's see, how long ago was it? Probably 10 or 15 years ago, maybe. It was called Ocean's 11. Anyone seen Ocean's 11? It's this movie, if you haven't seen it, it's this movie about this guy named Ocean. That's all I remember. I think his name was Ocean, for whatever reason. And he wants to pull off this big heist. He wants to steal money from this casino of this guy that he knows and try to get his wife back at the same time. And he can't do this alone. There's so many different obstacles against him to pull off this heist, to steal this huge sum of money. And so he asks people that he has a relationship with, his friends, his coworkers, people that he knows, to pull off this huge heist to steal all this money. When you're presented with a task, is it more fun to do it alone or with someone else? This guy definitely needed people to help him out to do this task. Unfortunately, sometimes what happens is we try to do things on our own. I am just as guilty of this as anybody. I try to do things on my own. I think I can do it all the time, and sometimes I end up doing it and doing okay, and sometimes I end up falling down with a mattress on top of myself when I'm trying to, change our bedroom or something like that. We all need help from time to time. We all need help, and we all need to be helping each other. One of these quotes, I'm going to read a few quotes here, and it's spoken by Mark Nepo in The Exquisite Risk. He says these three quotes: "To journey without being changed is to be a nomad. To change without journeying is to be a chameleon. To journey and be transformed by the journey is to be a pilgrim." The journey is important, but so is the destination. Both are equally important. The journey is so important. So where are we going? And what does God have in store for us? People typically when put to a vote, they would say that they're more focused on the goal than the journey. Because in our society, we're very goal-driven. We're goal-oriented. What is the goal that we have? Philippians 3:14, Paul says, "I press on towards the goal, to the prize, which I've been called heavenward." Paul knows that the goal is important, but the journey is also important. The book that we're going to be using is The Indispensable Relationships That You Can't Live Without. And these kind of relationships that we can't live without, there's 11 of them which are in the Bible, and they're absolutely necessary. Every Sunday school teacher and pastor that I have heard or been around has said to their congregations or to their groups that we need to go out and be Christ witnesses. We need to go out and be witnesses for Christ. And that is a huge challenge. That is a good thing. We should be doing that. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but what happens when we try to do this on our own? What happens when we try to go out and be Christ followers and to live the life that Christ has called us to and do it by ourselves? To do it without a strong foundation, to do it without resources, to do it without people who are surrounding us. The Greek word for witness is martros, which we get the word martyr from. The difference between people that are willing to be martyrs for a cause and people who just believe is huge. Martyrs are those people who are willing to take their word and to put it to action, to go out and to do, and to not just believe it and sit on the sideline. The disciples could not achieve this in an instant. They had to work at it, and we also need to work at this. And it didn't just come overnight. They needed to engage and be witnesses. But not just witnesses, but a term that they use in the book called witnesses. Now, it sounds kind of weird, but it's a witness. to be with Christ while you are witnessing, to be a witness. How many people have a cell phone or do texting or anything like that? Okay, so there's a lot of different ways in which you can text. If I said the term BFF, we would kind of all know that that means best friend forever or something to that effect, right? So what if I said a FFF, a faithful friend forever? Yeah, like that, guys? Faithful friend forever. The 11 different people that are outlined and that we're going to be talking about over the next 11 weeks are faithful friends forever. Each of us needs to have these type of people who are in our lives. So how many people do you have in your life that is a faithful friend forever? How many of you have an FFF? As we said earlier, that relationships are a two-way street. They're meant to be intimate. They're meant to be one-on-one and also in a community. How do we have intimate relationships with each other? When there's give and when there's take within the relationship. When we open ourselves up, when we kind of expose ourselves a little bit, become vulnerable to some degree. This isn't very common in our world. People are usually pretty guarded. They come up with walls built around themselves. But I would pray that this year we would break down some of the walls that we have in here at least, and maybe with others that we know, to help build those relationships, to become invested intimately in those relationships. Relationships are huge. Relationships are important. The reason why we need to be invested in relationships is because nowadays to witness to people, to go out and bang on doors and pass out tracts, doesn't work out a whole lot. Our society doesn't respond very well to that method anymore. But to invest in a relationship, to invest in the relationship with the goal not necessarily to be to save them, but to engage with them and to live life with them and to share with them and to model for them what Christ has called us to be is what it's really all about. This series, I hope, will challenge you. I really do pray that it challenges me and it challenges all of us to look at relationships differently. I hope we feel uncomfortable sometimes while we're sitting here together and we're learning and processing things together. I hope that it causes us to start new relationships that we might not have considered yet. And bottom line, I really hope that it moves us forward in our relationship that we have with each other and that we have with Christ. To that end, would you pray with me? God, thank you so much for sending your Son, Christ, down to earth to save us so that we can have a relationship with you. God, I pray that over these next 11 weeks that we might consider what it means to be a people that will surrender to you, a people that will invest in a relationship with you, and a people that love you. And I pray that you would help us and direct us as we seek this next year. And we know that this next year is going to have challenges. We know that it's going to have difficulties. And God, we're going to face those head on. And we're going to pray for each other. We're going to surround each other. And we're going to love on each other. And we know, God, that also at the same time, this next year is going to be amazing. And you're going to do amazing things in this church. And amazing things in our lives. And I pray that we might respond to that. That we can recognize the awesome ways in which you've moved and worked in our lives. And we thank you and we praise you for being an awesome God. And a God who loves us unconditionally. We pray this in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.